Hi, it's me, and it is still the 7th of September 2020, and I'm back because this is the first built from scratch monthly report. It's actually been about 5 weeks since I started the project, but everything is so up in the air at the moment. I didn't have the time to do this a week ago, but the plan is I am going to do a quick monthly report every month from now on, where I'm just going to talk about how the project is going in general, as opposed to the standard built from scratch stuff, which is just telling you the nuts and bolts of what I've been doing every day. There is going to be a format to these videos, which I've basically determined, but it's going to be quite dynamic, I think, whereby I'm going to run through a few quantitative metrics of success and or failure, and then a few qualitative ones. So I've actually got a couple of lists written out in front of me. I suspect they're going to change quite a lot over time, partly because I've only spent a few minutes just now thinking through them for the first time, but also so I might just change them because I decide there are things I've included that I don't want to include, and vice versa. And then in the longer term, it may well be that as the project expands and changes, it might make more sense to include different things anyway. So the lists as they stand at the moment begin with the quantitative bits and pieces, of which there are just 3 today. So, cumulative profit / loss. Well, this is definitely a loss at the moment. I haven't made any money at all, and I doubt I will for some time yet. And my accounting software tells me that the loss currently stands at £763.32. I actually am behind on my accounting to the tune of about a week, so that's probably up to more like about £900 now. It's funny, you know, as I'm reading that, off the top of my head, I'm not quite sure what I've spent that amount of money on, so let's just have a quick check. So we've got a few recurring subscriptions that I'm aware of. G Suite, Ahrefs, Canva, the thing with Jungle Scout where I paid for it and then decided I didn't want it, so I did get a refund, but it wasn't a full refund. There have been a few one-offs. Generate Press, Bandicam, which is the screen recorder, a few bits and pieces off Amazon. Okay, yeah, things just add up, don't they? So that is the current profit loss situation. The last 30 days revenue is a pretty simple one. I did not need to look it up. It is £0, 0 pence, or $0 if you prefer. I know I said in one of the early videos I was going to talk in terms of dollars whenever it comes to money, but it's so difficult just when you're talking about this stuff on the fly to constantly convert it. And also, you know, these are such early days. I've got no idea whether I'm ever going to build any kind of viewership or listenership to this. And even if I did, I don't know where those people will come from. So maybe I'll stop trying. Maybe I'll just talk in terms of pounds sterling, and that will be easier. So last 30 days website traffic is quantitative measure number 3, and that is also 0. If I look at Google Analytics, there are a few hits, but I suspect that is purely me. So that was simple. Onto the qualitative stuff. Point 1, a summary of what I've done. Okay, so it's been 5 weeks now since I started this, and what I have done is put the website together in a basic sense, and I have tailored the blog posts page and the single post page to a degree, so I'm fairly happy now with how they look, albeit the rest of the site is essentially non-existent. haven't even put together a homepage other than just a title. So there is still some work to be done there. Aside from that, I've spent pretty much the whole of that. Well, sorry, it's 5 weeks since I started this, but last week I was pretty much on holiday, so we've had approximately 4 working weeks. I would say I've spent just sort of 2 or 3 days, no, a couple of days maximum, in fact, on the website. I think maybe 2 or 3 days can be ascribed to random bits and pieces, so I'm going to say about 3 weeks has been spent just doing this, learning how to make these videos, turn them into podcasts, transcriptions, drawing up a written process for how to do it, iterating on that 2 or 3 times, which took up really a lot of time, and just figuring out how to do all the adding the intros to the video and the podcast, disseminating the podcast, setting up the social media, limited though that is. There really has proven to be quite a lot involved in it. And that has been exacerbated by the fact that I am not psychologically set up for just knocking something out that's not great. I want to do everything really well. The fact that I am having to do this in a fairly quick rush, rough way, is a real kind of struggle. And I fought against it to a degree by kind of getting on top of it really quickly in the first few days, but then allowing myself to spend some time making it a bit good. And by that I just mean, for the videos, I could just shoot the video, upload it to YouTube, simple as that. But putting together a basic introduction to it was something I just felt was worth an investment of time. It really is debatable, I think. Well, I don't think I'll ever know whether it is worth it in terms of the return on investment, but just in terms of what makes me feel good, I like doing that sort of thing. And I have at least managed to rein it in to some extent, so I have gone from not knowing how to do any of this stuff really, or not really having done it in the past, to now having done it all, got it all online, written up and understood in a sort of functional manner within about 3 weeks. I'm going to talk about the runway, the time and the money I've got in a second, but just to say, to reference that in a sort of single sentence in this section of this assessment, I will say that the impact this sorting out this media stack has had on the runway is, just about acceptable. It's really scary that if I've only got about half a year to do this, I have spent whatever that would be, about 1/7 of the time just sorting this out, when it is not the actual core of what I'm doing. Is kind of worrying, but the potential power it has going forwards means I think it is justified, and it's pretty much over now, so at least we can move forward with the more fundamental tasks. So next question, what has worked? Well, what has worked is that the pages of the website that I've been working on are up and running, and I quite like the way they look. And that has taken fairly minimal time because I have a little bit of experience with basic web design and WordPress, so that's been good. And then this process, I am fairly happy with the quality of the output now. I think if you look at the videos, the podcast, if you look at the web page that is displaying them, the web pages, you will certainly see the work of an amateur. There's no, I'm not deluding myself that you would look at them and think that's incredible, this guy really knows what he's doing, or he's had some external help. But given that they are amateur, created by an amateur, and and I'm not even like a keen amateur who's put loads of time into doing this stuff. I have just kind of rushed it out over the last few weeks. I am happy that in the context of that, they look and work reasonably well. So next question is, what have you enjoyed? Straight away I'm thinking that might be a question I get rid of because it's so tied in with what has worked. Given that this is a video primarily about work, can I answer that differently? No, I think I'm going to wrap those two questions up together. I have enjoyed the fact that the stuff that has worked fairly well has worked fairly well. I suppose the only caveat to add there is that this whole thing with the videos and the podcast is perhaps part of the reason why I've spent the time doing it that I have is because I quite like it. It's fun turning the camera on and talking about what I've been up to, in a different way to it being fun, kind of like solving a technical problem with the website, for example, or the fun of writing an article, both of which to my weird mind definitely have an element of fun to them, but this is a different thing, and a change is as good as a break, so that's great. Yeah, that'll do. That's what I've enjoyed. So what has not worked, and I am going to wrap them up with the next question of what has not been enjoyable. Well, nothing has not worked. There have certainly been multiple technical challenges, and also I have reworked the guide to putting this media together more thoroughly and more times than I would like, really. I think generally speaking, if I'm putting a guide together for my own use, I would kind of expect to do a rough draft, then a full-on quality draft, and at the end of that, really, I would normally expect, with a sort of standard level, complicated, like complexity of process, that really then all that would take would be a little bit of editing, and that would be your final guide complete. With this, it's been considerably more complex a process, and especially since I'm coming at it from nothing. Oh, sorry for hesitation. I've just got a horrible suspicion I might not have turned the microphone off. I'm just going to check. Microphone's on. Okay, thank you. Because it's been so much more complex, I found that I did a rough draft, kind of rewrote it again, pretty much changed my whole thoughts about how I was going to be using this process and what parts were going to be included, and therefore kind of had to do it again. Essentially, I've ended up doing it 3 or 4 times, and it's a big guide. To give you an idea, I've written about 6 pages of dense text explaining how to do all this stuff. So that's really taken up a lot of time, and I suppose therefore has kind of been unenjoyable. I like working my way through new processes, and I kind of like writing them up for future use and to get the understanding of them into my head. But when you have to do things multiple times and you're really sort of grinding through the technical details, it kind of becomes less fun, I suppose, especially when you've got that time pressure in the back of your head that really you need to be finishing this up and moving on to the next thing. So that's probably been the worst thing this month, which is why I'm now very much looking forward to moving on. So how is the runway looking? Well, decent still. Whilst noting that I have just burnt a reasonable bit of it on this process, I really am not that far away from starting to put the content together that is actually going to be the foundation of this site, and that is going to start moving me towards earning that first little bit of money. And well, the truth is, It's actually really difficult to figure out how to feel about this, because that minimum amount of time that we've decided I can have to do this, the sort of roughly 6 months, is so uncertain. It's difficult to know how bothered to feel about it. In fact, when I was discussing this with my wife initially, it was kind of me who was pushing for a fixed limit of 6 months. And I think that's because I knew that as a motivational factor, having a deadline in front of me would be really useful. And she, trying to be nice, kept saying, it doesn't necessarily have to be that. We could probably be able to find ways of finding a bit of extra money so you can carry on. So, obviously that is in my head, that I've sort of got a green light to spend a bit more time on this if necessary. So I don't know. The runway is looking okay. It's certainly looking okay to the point where even if the 6 months does end up being a deadline, at that point, as long as I don't do anything else that is, debatably a waste of time, at the end of the 6 months I will have, I assume, I'm going to guess, what do I reckon I can do? Probably about 40 or 50 reasonable quality articles on the site, or perhaps more like 20 that are quite good quality, and then maybe another 60 or 70 that are just sort of a few hundred words of something fairly basic about a product or a product review, that kind of thing. And at that level of content, especially if I have been able to leverage built from scratch or anything else to build a few links and get a bit of authority for the site, I would like to think it would be starting to show signs of life. And it's only really signs of life that are going to be required to extend the project. So I feel that that's okay. Having said that, as mentioned in the last built from scratch video, I am toying with the idea of starting up a little bit of retail much earlier than originally anticipated, aside from the sort of affiliate marketing content, which, if I do it, there's obviously a good side to that potentially, which is that you can start making money very quickly from retailing goods. If you're buying them wholesale, selling them for more than that, and the margin there is covering any further expenses, and as long as you are actually managing to sell a bit, then you're going to start making some money straight away, and it's just a case of how much. So that could actually extend the runway, massively, indefinitely. On the other hand, if it turns out it's possible to try retail and balls it up so badly that it actually doesn't make you any money, or makes you so little per amount of time that you put into it that it's not enough to live on, and you end up therefore wasting all your time on something that doesn't end up working, then it could destroy that runway. So that is a double-edged sword. I'm really going to have to put some time into thinking about whether I do want to invest in that at the moment or not, because there are obviously other things I could do with the money. For example, I could spend it just on a bit of basic content for the site. I'm sure I could find a writer who would be able to do some reasonable quality stuff, or rather good enough quality for them to be able to do those basic product review pages or whatever else I decide needs doing, whilst I concentrate on stuff that is a bit more interest worthy and backlinkable. So we'll see about that. Next question, what impacts on family or social life have occurred? So I'm going to include this. I know it's not perhaps standard to talk about this kind of thing, but I don't really want this project to be concerned with what is standard. So I figured this might be an interesting thing to consider. At the moment, there's not a lot to say. I'm working 40 hours a week, pretty much. I suppose last week is kind of relevant to this. We needed to do childcare and stuff. My wife had holiday that she was able to take from work, so that was great. And we decided prior to the start of this project that I would put aside 6 weeks per year as like annual leave from my own project, and that I would actually record that and do it properly as if I were my own employee. So I'm not tempted to never take any leave to the detriment of family, but at the same time I'm also not tempted to just take time off whenever I want, which could cause a problem if you were having issues with motivation and you end up taking too much time off. So that's a positive with regards to family life, is that I used that system last week and gave myself some time off, and that was good. But apart from that, because at the moment there are no demands there are no demands on my time with regards to this project, in the sense that everything is completely flexible. I'm pretty much working Monday to Friday 9 to 5, give or take. But if I need to not do that, that's absolutely fine. And so there are no wider impacts there. What will be interesting if in the future I start doing things that do require me to be in the office or at work at given times, to see how well I can handle that. So final question, anticipation of what's going to be going on next month. Very simple. I'm going to be creating the second website. Well, no, I suppose finishing off the basic pages of the .co.uk site, which is the one that is currently launched. That shouldn't take too long because it's going to be really basic, just a homepage, which is going to be nothing more, I imagine, than a sort of hero photo at the top of the page and a brief explanation of what the site is about. I'm probably not even going to do an about page or a contact page at this point. Hang on, have I done a contact page already? I think I must have, to have got those 409 errors. This is how much is going on at the moment and how not on top of everything I therefore am. I don't even know if my own website has got a contacts page. Anyway, that won't take too long to finish that off. I will then transpose it onto the .site domain, and at that point a bit of work might come in, because I'll then need to do this thing with the hreflang tags and make sure I implement that properly. I can imagine that taking maybe a couple of days. Fingers crossed no longer than that. So that's going to be pretty much task number one. I'm going to be keeping on top of the media production, and then hopefully I am finally going to move on to writing a couple of basic articles. So that is next month. Oh, sorry, and then I'm also just going to be giving some thought to the retail aspect of things and potentially taking some first steps in that direction. So that's going to be next month. And that's it. On with the rest of the day's work, and I'll see you tomorrow.